Good morning, everybody. This is Hunter from Gator Games, and welcome back to another Orc Tactics video. Today, my gift to you is going to be how can you utilize the new 11th edition terrain rules regarding objectives, cover, hidden, and gone to ground. These are some of the best new rules in the game, and they benefit us greatly. Super important that you follow these new rules and you stay up to date. A couple of things have changed. So, objectives themselves, totally different than last edition, and in a good way for us. Definitely useful. Cover has also been greatly changed. It no longer affects us, it affects our opponent, and there are ways to manipulate it. And lastly, there is a new rule called hidden, which is very useful for us, which gets even stronger if you do a couple of things correctly. So we'll move quickly. So first thing, a little note about terrain and objectives. There is a lot of it. If you played 10th edition, then you're aware that sometimes orcs have a hard time getting from cover to cover. That is not going to be the case this time around. More than ever before, we have a much easier time deploying. Not just that, there are certain layouts that are available to us that weren't before, such as Dawn of War. It's very good for orcs. In general, both of the armies, it feels like in 11th edition, are much closer than they were previously. Some of the layouts, you only have about 18 to 20 inches between both players. So assuming your opponent moves up at all and you deployed on the line or close to the line, chances are you're going to connect with something on turn 1 or 2. It's almost a guarantee. So staging. Maybe in the future I can make another video about staging specifically because I think that's something all Orc players should know. And looking at these layouts tells us a lot about where we should be putting our units before that wall turn. A couple of other things to note. So staging positions are better, easier to deploy for us. You cannot get shot sometimes on these new layouts. If you deploy correctly, put your units in the right place. There's a lot more cover. The cover is going to make you essentially, we'll get into this later, low not 15. So lots of ways to abuse that and make it beneficial for us. Plunging fire is also a rule still. You can make a Stampa shoot on 3s. Do with that information what you will. But in some cases, it might be worth it to put a squad of Ludas or something cheap also like flash kits on your home objective. You know, if you don't shoot, they're not going to be able to be shot, and you could get +1 ballistic skill just from standing on top of terrain. So in general, we're going to fit more models on objectives. You can benefit from using the terrain features this time around. And generally, the game wants you to be on objectives or be on terrain doing things. So, something to think about. But let's get into cover. I'm sure that's why you're here. This is a rule that often, I know people who played 300 games of 10th edition and still couldn't get cover right by the end. So, the thing is, cover is different now. Cover, here's how it works. I'm going to just explain how it operates for you because this might be useful. I might even, maybe I'll show something on TTS. So look around maybe later this week. I'll have a video about deployment on maybe just one layout, and maybe I'll talk more specifically about the cover rules and how we can use them to our advantage. So put a comment down below if you think that would be useful, if you'd like to see some TTS demonstrations of these new rules. So cover, here's how it works. This checks by model, not by the unit, by model. Every model has to fit one or more of these conditions. So doesn't have to be both, one or more. Infantry, beast, or swarm inside of a terrain area. A terrain area is that big footprint the terrain goes on top of. So, infantry, beast, or swarm in a terrain area. Second, the model is not fully visible because of terrain or terrain areas obscuring it. If one or both of these is true, the enemy has -1 ballistic skill against you. Let's just look at the image really quick because I think what GW puts out is pretty good here. This is a decent explanation, I think, for explaining cover. As you can see, the Tau, I think those are Pathfinders, are drawing line of sight. We'll start with the Rhino in the back. The Rhino cannot be fully seen because there's terrain or a terrain area blocking it. So, not fully visible. So, that unit will have -1 ballistic skill. I think it's funny that they use Tau because Tau have ways to strip cover and they have ways to give themselves additional hit bonuses to their hit. So not a great example on their part, but it works still. Unit C, as you can see, those sisters are inside of that terrain feature. All of them are, visibly to the Pathfinders obscured because they're in a terrain area. So -1 ballistic skill. Unit B, though, those sisters, because not every model in the unit is within cover, it does not affect the Pathfinders trying to shoot those sisters. So, if you want to use the new cover rules, make sure that every single model in your unit is getting that benefit of cover. So make sure that they are touching the terrain or they are at least obscured by the actual terrain on the terrain area. So behind objective areas, behind terrain. That's how you're going to get cover. So what does this mean for us? In general, we're going to be making less saves. Because we're impacting the opponent's hit dice, this is a great boon for us. Imagine somebody has a D6 blast weapon or something crazy like a Vindicator, right? Vindicator shooting a unit in cover without Oath of Moment, without full hit rerolls, they are going to have a hard time doing a lot of damage. Because, Space Marines shooting on 3s to 4s, that's not good for them, right? Like Space Marines don't have a ton of shots. They do shoot a lot and effectively, but generally not buckets of dice. So they're going to have a hard time converting, hitting on 4s to wounds because we're generally high toughness. So high AP guns aren't going to have as big an issue because I'm sure if you played in 10th, you remember it affected your save. Orks, we kind of didn't even like that because against AP 2 or 3 shooting, you still didn't make a save in cover. So I like this change. I want to put less saves on my 5-up boys or 7-up Gretchen. I would rather my opponent take a hit to their dice rolling. So towing onto terrain is going to give you cover. You can be behind that wall. Doesn't matter. Just touch the terrain. You've got cover. Very easy. It's an easy to understand rule this time around, right? I'm sure people will still mess it up, but a little better. And in general, we want to stand on objectives. Standing on objectives is good. That's how you win the game, I think, most of the time. So standing on objectives, doing actions on objectives, and then being safe when you're there, right? I'm not going to be upset about running 20 boys onto a point, and then I'm pretty safe in knowing that that 20 boys unit is probably still going to be there at the end of the opponent's shooting phase. Maybe not. Depends on the army, but stealth, getting cover, -1 to hit, -1 to enemy ballistic skill, and then -1 to wound strat in Warhorde, right? Pretty effective. They're gonna have a hard time killing us. So generally, I am happy about this, except for mounted squigs and war bikers are gonna suffer a little bit, but they don't have a hard time moving around the board. You can still use the terrain to your advantage to get the -1 ballistic skill. It's pretty good with the squigs and the bikers because they're T6 and T7. So those are units that are going to want -1 ballistic skill. So let's move on. Let's talk about hidden. Hidden involves having cover. So let's break it down. Hidden. Here's how you achieve hidden. You have to be in cover. right? So you have to, that's a stipulation, right? You're going to have to be in the terrain. So the same things that are going to give you cover are going to give you hidden. But here is what the rules say specifically. If all of the following apply. So the first one was just 2 rules. This is also just 2 rules, but you need both to be true to get hidden. 1. Infantry, beast, or swarm in a terrain area with a light or dense feature. So only infantry, beasts, and swarm can be hidden. 2. That model did not shoot this turn or last turn. So no shooting. If you shot, you are not hidden. You cannot be hidden for an entire battle round. That turn to next. So both of those things have to be true. So 1, infantry, beast, or swarm in a terrain area. Right? You have to have cover. Second part, did not shoot. Orcs love this. I won't shoot all the time. Now, why don't you want to shoot? This bonus gives you 15-inch lone op. Effectively, right? It's not called lone op, they call it hidden, but it's the same thing. You cannot be seen within 15 inches. This is huge. Lots of armies have rules where they affect a model that's visible. You are not visible with it, but they have to be within 15. So if they're trying to doom bolt you, right? If I'm playing against Thousand Suns, they can't doom bolt you. You're not visible. They can't see you, right? 15 inches. That is awesome. So you can deploy on the line on some deployments, and then not be shot, right? If your opponent wants to move within 15 inches of your front line on turn 1, be my guest, right? We all know if you've played Orcs for long, if the opponent is within 18 inches, I'm just going to call the wall and I'm going to charge half their army, right? So 15 inches is a great distance. If your opponent closes that gap, I would love that. You know, we want to be more aggressive. I love it when my opponent is within 15 inches of me. This is also checked by model, so there are ways to make yourself invisible pretty much. But if one guy moves up and touches an objective because you have to do an action or something, if they didn't shoot the prior turn, he could have 15-inch lone op, and you can hide the rest of the unit behind the objective. And since this is checked by model, excuse me, you don't have to worry about that unit getting shot necessarily, right? Your opponent would still have to move within 15. But there's other ways to use it. Personally, I'm really going to like flash gets with this rule because flash gets love to shoot. So you could easily have something within your shooting range that's also outside of your hidden, right? You could have something within 24, but not 15. So on your turn, you can take advantage of the flash gets heavy rule and only move 3 inches and still get your maximum number of shots. So great rule in general. I think hidden is awesome. Great. It feels good for the game. Although I could see them maybe nerfing this because, you know, something about moving around a ton of orcs that just kill everything that they get into melee with that can't be shot is a little strong, but I don't know. GW likes to nerf us when we're too good, and right now it feels like we're pretty good. So 15 inches, you know, don't shoot those sluggas. What's the point? You know, you're going to do maybe 1 or 2 wounds to a squad of Space Marines and then get your ass shot off. I would wait. I think it would be a good idea to wait. Lastly, the last thing I want to talk about is gone to ground. So this is the last rule that orcs can really benefit from. In fact, I think any melee army, if you're melee infantry focused, you're going to like this rule. This is hidden plus, more or less. Here's the stipulations. I'm going to lay it out for you just like I did with hidden. So rule number 1, you have to be hidden. So the first 2 things still have to be true. You have to be an infantry beast or swarm inside a light or dense terrain feature. You have to not shoot. But a couple of other things. So step 1, be hidden. That's rule 1 for gone to ground. Step 2, you have to be obscured by the terrain feature itself, not just the terrain area, right? And also not just the terrain area, not just a terrain feature. It has to be a dense terrain feature. Dense, solid terrain feature. So I use this picture from the Goonhammer article. Well, I guess they're tabletop battles now, but whatever, you get it. Anything in blue in this picture, and I think when you're looking at the official GW layouts, let me just go back. Yeah, so any of the green terrain features when you're looking at the official app, but here they're blue. So only the solid or dense areas are going to count for this. And lastly, you cannot have shot. So you have to be obscured somehow by that dense terrain feature. You can't just be on the thing and benefit. You have to be obscured by it. So it feels like the game is becoming more interactive because I have to think about how my units are grouped up or how they're standing around that terrain feature. They can't just be on it and benefit. Also, I use this example, this image from the Goonhammer article because, as you can see, some of the terrain features are one piece, some are two pieces. So the one on the top, it's a joined larger terrain area, so it's easier for you to get the hidden mechanic because the dense piece is huge and it's all technically the same area, so you just have to make sure your guys are obscured by that actual piece of terrain on the area. But the bottom one, as you can see with the little L's, you're not going to go to ground off of the little L's. You can still get hidden, but if you want the extra 3 inches, if you want to remain 12-inch lone op, you have to tag your guys onto the smaller blue piece with the solid terrain feature. So something to think about. It's a big deal. Overall, I think we benefit greatly, Orks specifically, from a lot of these new rules. Like I said, leave a comment down below, like or subscribe. Tell me what you think of the video. I'll be making more, like I said, later this week. If you want to see that terrain layout deployment video and maybe a little demonstration of some cover mechanics, drop a comment. Tell me what you like to see. Tell me what you want to see. And we'll talk in the future. This was Hunter from Gator Games. Thanks for watching.